Hi. Well, if it isn't one thing, it's another. First of all, it was a shower. It just packed up delivering hot water. And it was a ceramic mixer tap. Started dripping. They're supposed to last a lifetime, but they obviously don't. And now it's a blooming toilet. It only flushes intermittently. There's a sort of skill to it. If you do it too fast, it doesn't work, and if you do it too slow, it doesn't work. If you've got visitors, it's quite embarrassing for them. You can hear them cranking away on this, thing to get rid of whatever's in the pan without any success. So there comes a time when I have to have a look at this thing. So whilst I'm looking at it, I'll video it. But I'll just explain what I think the problem is. This is the cistern, which contains all the water, and this is the flush and siphon mechanism. There's a piston inside here which has got holes in, and on top of it is a plastic sheet, just like thick polythene. And there's the arm of the piston, which when you flush the toilet it lifts it up, and there's a spring in here round the sort of shaft of the piston, if you like. So when you pull this up, this flap is pushed down on the piston and it lifts all that water up, and it goes up here over the top of the siphon and down into the toilet. And when the action of the siphon begins, it pulls all this water in the cistern up there. When you let go of the flush handle, this spring pushes the piston back down, and this plastic flap, as it were, is pushed up out of the way, and water runs round from the cistern into this mechanism here. Now, I have a sneaky suspicion that this plastic here has got a hole in it, or is cracked in some way. So that when I lift this up by pushing down on the handle, instead of it lifting water up like that, there's a hole in this, and all the water just escapes through to the underside. So I've got to get this mechanism out to replace that piece of plastic in there. Now, toilets, modern toilets anyway, tend to come in two types. This is the older version. This is the cistern with a siphon in it. And this is it's just got a toilet flush pipe that goes to the back of the toilet pan. And if you have to remove this cistern, if you've got one of these, it's a piece of cake. You just undo that big hex nut there at the bottom, and this thing just lifts out. Once you've disconnected all the sort of levers in the top here, but it just lifts out. Now, most modern houses have one of these, a closed coupled toilet. This is the pan, this is the cistern, and at the back of the pan it's all one piece. This is part of the ceramic makeup of the pan itself, and the cistern sits on top of it, and it's held there by two bolts, one on either side, with, in my case, a wing nut. screws it to this metal piece here. So you can't get access to this without taking the whole cistern off the wall, which is a real pain. So that's the job of the day, unfortunately. And the plan was to go fishing. And it started off an absolutely beautiful day. But typical at this time of year in this part of the world, the wind is coming from the North Sea. So whilst it was very sunny earlier on, it's now clouded over and there's a brisk northeast wind, so it's quite cold outside. So this is probably a good time to tackle this. So there you can see the siphon mechanism, which I've got to get off. And this toilet is a close coupled toilet. So you can see there's no pipe as such. The cistern just sits on top of the toilet. And you can see that it's held on by two bolts, one on either side, with a wing nut. So I just have to take that wing nut off on both sides, uncouple everything, unscrew the cistern from the wall, and lift it off. So the first thing to do is to turn the water off. Unfortunately, there's a little valve there, which you just turn with a screwdriver. If you don't have this, obviously you've got to turn the water off at the mains. And on the other side is the overflow pipe, which comes down here, which is a relatively straightforward thing to fix. It's just a plastic screw. And then there are two screws holding this to the wall. Fortunately, they're both brass, so they haven't corroded. Quite often I notice on the internet these things are all rusted in, so hopefully they will come out easily. And just got a little piece of plastic pipe that's sawn up, so that if you over tighten this blooming thing, not that you should, you don't crack the cistern, because that would be a real pain. That if you crack the cistern, that would be a major event. So once I've isolated the water, I've got to drain this. Now fortunately mine works intermittently, so if I can get it to work, most of the water will go down the siphon and into the toilet. But if it doesn't work at all, then I've got to siphon all of this water out. Or if you've got a window in your toilet, you can just siphon it out of the window onto the ground outside. So I need a piece of hose pipe to siphon this water out, what remains of it, into the bucket. And then what a little remains I can just simply sponge out at the bottom, get rid of it. So I've just siphoned the rest of the water from the cistern into a bucket, and now all that remains to do is disconnect the wing nuts, the overflow pipe, the water inflow pipe, and those two screws that hold it onto the wall, and hopefully it will just lift off. obviously when I'm taking these wing nuts off I must make sure that I'm slacking them off, not tightening them up, otherwise I'll crack that ceramic and that'll be another bad do. Well, everything's disconnected now, so hopefully it'll just lift off. So there it is, it's all lifted off. The noise of the fan. So there is the bottom of the cistern. These are where the wing nuts are attached. This is called a donut washer, which seals the cistern from the toilet, and usually they're squashed flat and they can't be reused, so I'll probably have to replace that. And then I just need to take this big hex off here, and the cistern should the siphon should come out. So there you can see the donut washer. It's a bit bashed and battered, so I'll need to get another one of those. And the best way to do that is to take this old one with you, because they're all sorts of different sizes, and just take that to plumbers merchants and they should have a replacement. So there's the big hex nut off. I need a big pair of Stilsons to get that off. Didn't need the force, just needed the width. This is the plate which has the hex nuts on. You'll see that it's slightly bent. It's meant to be. So I must make sure that when I put it back on, I put it with a curve so the ends point down so that the ends point downwards. And this is the bottom of the siphon, so I can now take that out. So there you can see the bottom of the siphon, and this is this plastic flap in there. So I just need to disconnect this at the top and pull the piston out and have a look at that flap, which I suspect is damaged. So there you can see the piston, and this is the spring, return spring, and you can see that. You can see it there. You can see that it's torn. So that plastic needs replacing. That's been the cause of all the trouble. That little piece of, essentially, a bit like a bit of polythene bag, really. Well, there's a major problem trying to get this thing off here. There's a lip there, and this slides over the lip into a groove underneath, and it's proving impossible to get off without using brute force. Oh, there you can see that lip there, and in trying to get this off I've damaged it, so it looks like I'm going to have to get a new siphon altogether, which is a bit of a nuisance, really. You'd think that I've had some system where that retaining piece of plastic would have come off easily. And even it getting back on, I'd have to drive it on with a piece of metal tube. Oh, what a cock up of a design. So the easiest way to get this thing off would be to file this ridge. Just file it off all the way around. Because when you put it back on, the spring will hold it in place. So I've just filed some of this ridge off, not all of it, but filed it back. So this bit should come off much more easily now. And if I'd done that in the first place, I wouldn't have damaged it. So you can see now it just pops off quite easily. And when I want to replace it, having renewed the diaphragm, it just clips back. So just filing round there, just taking some of that ridge off, makes the job so much easier. And it doesn't affect the action of the diaphragm at all. So this is the diaphragm which I've mangled even more by trying to get that collar off. It's quite simply thick plastic, thick polythene, and I have some thick polythene, so I can quite simply draw around this to make a new one. So to make the new plastic sort of diaphragm for this, I can just put this on top of the plastic and draw around it. When you cut the new piece of plastic, you'll see that it just protrudes beyond the sort of piston bit all the way around. So it's not exactly the same size as this here. It's slightly bigger. But it doesn't want to be too big, otherwise it'll get jammed in the bore of the siphon. So it has to be cut really carefully. If you just draw around this bit here so that there's nothing protruding, then it doesn't work. The water simply escapes down the side there when you lift this up. So you're not lifting water up into the siphon, it's just escaping down the sides, which you don't want. So you can see there that it's a good fit. And when I pull this up, you get a better view. You can just see the sort of plastic protruding slightly, but it's not so large that it gets jammed in the bore, and the spring is able to pull it back down again. So that piece of plastic has to be a good fit, or the siphon doesn't work, or the spring isn't strong enough to bring the sort of piston back down. So there, done, hopefully. If it's a good fit, when you pull down on there, you should feel a little blast of air coming out of here. The donut washer fits with a curved side pointing down. The flat side points upwards. When you take the wing nuts, take these bolts here. This is squeezed down into that opening. So I just need to put this over the hex nut. So it fits like that, and you'll see that there's a gap here. But when the wing nuts are tightened up on the toilet, this will be squeezed, and that gap will close. It just remains to put the cistern back on, which I suspect is not going to be easy with these loose bolts trying to get them through the holes in the toilets. But anyway, we'll see. Just a matter of patience. Just in line here, I'll put some PTFE tape round the threads on the water inlet, so I'll get a nice tight seal when I eventually reconnect it. Well, I've filled the cistern, having reconnected it, just checked round for leaks. Well, it's all back together now, and it's working. Thank God for that. But if you can't be bothered with all that hassle of cutting the little plastic thing out and making sure it fits, because it's a bit of a fiddly job, just go and buy another siphon. They're only about a tenner. And if you get a plumber to do it, you're probably looking at, I don't know, an hour and a half's work maybe, whatever that costs. Anyway, we'll see you again. Bye bye. Well, unfortunately, the latter part of the video was inadvertently recorded at 1080p as opposed to the beginning of the video, which was recorded at 1080i, and of course they're not compatible, so I'd quite simply to play the 1080p video back through the TV and just record it from the TV, which is why you've got all that interference. But if you're repairing a siphon, I don't suppose it's going to make any difference.